These are two of the longest zoom bridge cameras ever made.
Oh wow, that's big. That is big.
And in this video, we will compare the similarities and differences and help you decide which one is better for your needs. If you're a wildlife shooter, birder, astrophotographer, plane spotter, or you're just looking for a camera with a high zoom for everyday use, then this video is for you. Now, these cameras are similar in many ways, but also different in ways you may not realize. And speaking of which, let's get to that first misconception. You may be saying, well, I want the camera with the newest tech, and since the P1100 was released in 2025, that's the newer camera, right?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so
No.
either.
The P1100 is 98% the P1000, which was released in 2018, but the P950 was released in 2020. So the P950 is really 2 years newer than the P1100.
So what changes were made to the P1100 over the P1000? Well, we went to a USB-C connector, a selectable AF area in bird mode, and a fireworks option has been added to the multiple exposure light and scene. So if you're really into photographing fireworks,
then the P1100 is for you.
Nothing to see here, please.
So for 7 years, there wasn't really much of an update to the P1000. What was Nikon doing?
exactly.
So if you want to save a few bucks from the P1100, you can get a used P1000, and I think it's a good deal. But by the way, the P950 was a real update from the P900. It introduced 4K video, it brought along a better viewfinder, and a lot more updates. Now, some differences you may not know about between the 950 and 1100. The 950 is rated at a bit better battery life and image stabilization too, but we're going to check that. But neither the 950 or 1100 is weather sealed, so be careful in the rain or dusty environments. Now, both have the same small sensor, but you can still get some nice images, like look at this bird I found sitting on my car. Look at the sharpness here with the P950. I found this strange because birds usually fly away quickly when people are near. I don't want them to get into my car.
I think he just took a crap. Well, I think he must be injured. So I'm going to go.
Well, so much for that theory.
By the way, I bought these cameras and I've had these cameras for a while now, so it's a good long-term review with my own money. I have no bias towards either one. What you're going to hear is my own opinion based on observations that I'm going to share with you. Feel free to disagree or share your views in the comments section, but I want you to know this is an unbiased review. I'm not asking you for anything. There's no sponsor in this video. Only thing I ask is you just take a quick second. If you like this type of content, super zoom and bridge cameras, you don't see a lot of that online anymore, hit that like and subscribe button because I've got a lot on the way. Cameras like this of the past, present, and what's coming up in the future. They both have very similar menus and features like time-lapse. You can take up to 20 pictures per session while shooting video, and that's convenient. They both have scene modes and image effects, and both have a useful snapback zoom feature, so if you lose your place when you're tightly zoomed, pressing that button will quickly snap you back so you can reacquaint yourself. They both have bird and moon modes. Other than the new USB-C port on the P1100, both cameras have mic jacks, they have HDMI connectors, they both have pop-up flashes.
Both have the same quality, fully flip-out, tilting rear screens, which is nice, and really nice, bright viewfinders. Both shoot RAW and in the same file sizes. Both shoot up to 4K 30 video with a maximum 30-minute limit. Now, the P1100 updated the Wi-Fi protocol a bit, but they both use the same SnapBridge app to connect to your phone, which I find buggy and, oh boy, it takes a lot of patience, let's put it that way. The P1100 is bigger in every dimension. It's significantly longer, heavier, and you'll notice that when you're carrying it around all day. It's almost a pound heavier, and you do feel that, and you'll feel it in your pocketbook too. The P950 at $846 US versus $1146, and that's when it's in stock. Big difference in focusing too. You have this little adjustment wheel on the 950 versus the large ring in front on the P1100.
So let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the zoom difference. 2,000 millimeter equivalent here on the 950, 3,000 on the P1100.
Let's compare that in the real world. All the way in the distance here, there's a clock on that brick wall. You could barely see it with your eye. The 950 at 2,000 millimeters. It's full zoom. Here is what it looks like. Compare that to the P1100 at 3,000 millimeters. I've also noticed that there seems to be a bit more contrast and maybe even a little more sharpness in the P950 shot. And here you can just see what 2,000 versus 3,000 looks like in video. You do get closer, that's for sure. Now let's simulate a real-world situation with wildlife all the way in the distance. Simulating a wildlife experience. I'll first go with the 2,000. Referring to the 2,000 millimeters of the P950. So you can see how much closer you get when you're really far away. And also take a look at the image stabilization. Remember, the 950 was rated a little better, and maybe because you don't get in as tight, it's going to be easier to hand hold. But I also see that contrast difference. And take a look at the still shot comparisons. Here is the shot at full zoom on the P950 of the geese, and they look nice and sharp and crisp. I think it looks good. The P1100 at full zoom looks more muted. This one looks a little better, but definitely less punchy at full zoom. It looks like you do get a little bit of a loss, and you may see more grain in the P1100 due to the slower aperture. Now, there are a lot of denoising programs out there, and editing. You can fix the contrast and colors, but I still want you to see them side by side. These are unprocessed JPEGs. So while you do get in tighter with the P1100, the price you pay is a little bit hazier of a picture than the P950 at its full zoom. Now, I recently made a video where I cropped the image from the Sony RX10 Mark IV, which goes out to 600 millimeters, to the P1100's 3000 millimeters to see how it compared, and I was pretty impressed, and I think that was a popular video, so let's do it here. Here's the P950 cropped to about 3000 millimeters, and here is the P1100 at its optical 3000 millimeters, and I think it's holding up pretty well. Let's look at both at 2,000 millimeters. Here's the P950 at 2,000, and when you look at the P1100 at 2,000 millimeters, it doesn't get as hazy as it did at 3,000. So now the two cameras are a lot closer at the 2,000 millimeter mark. What about autofocus? One of the improvements you don't read too much about was that the 950's autofocus was supposedly improved. Now look how slow it is to go from my hand to the background. It's a long journey, and there's even a little bit of shimmering back there. And when you see a little bit of hunting even in trying to get that hand in focus. Now let's take a look at the 950. Also takes a little while, but I think it's just a little quicker there to get my hand in focus, and maybe a second or two quicker for the background. So there's less glass that it has to move through with the 950. But I will say that one of the most frustrating issues with either camera is the autofocus, especially because we're going to be using these cameras for fast-moving objects like birds, which tend not to stay still, and the focus often does hunt. It just doesn't lock on. Now, there is an AF lock button, which I do recommend using if you're shooting video, especially on smaller subjects like this hoverfly. It does go in and out, and they don't stay still. So it requires a lot of patience. The autofocus systems are older. They're contrast-based systems, and they do struggle. You need a lot of light. Now, here's a nice hummingbird. The light was good. It didn't do that terrible, the autofocus. I was able to get a nice little video segment out of it. A very cool hummingbird shot here with the P950. Let's say you're shooting your kid's sporting game, like a Frisbee football game. How does it do? Well, here's an example. I was all the way in the distance here. And again, the camera is not great for fast action, but in a situation like this, it handled it for the most part. There were some misfocuses and a little bit of hunting, but again, it was a bright day, so did pretty well. You could see the little bit of the hunt in and out there, but it captured most of the scene pretty well, and the video in 4K looks nice and crisp. Now, the P1100 can take really nice, sharp video, too, here in 4K 30, as you can see from this plain video. The lens on these cameras are so versatile. There's a near macro focusing capability, so let's compare the two. Here's the P1100. This is about as close as I could get to this plant versus the 950. About the same, but again, more contrast with the 950. And that close focusing distance opens up other possibilities if you're into macro work, shooting insects, bees, wasps, spiders. Just, don't get stung.
So in order to determine who should get which of these cameras, let's put the most common uses into categories, and we'll go from most popular to least popular. So I would say the number one use for these cameras are for birders. It's such a popular community, and these cameras are ultra popular in the birding community.
All the shots in this section were taken with the P950, and at no point did I ever feel I needed more than the zoom of the P950. And carrying it around for a few hours, I appreciated the lighter weight than the P1100.
There he is.
Also, people that use full frame cameras, generally the telephoto lenses on those cameras are 600 millimeters, usually not much more.
And also realize one thing as I demonstrate on this control tower at the airport. As we approach 3,000 millimeters, you see the effect of the atmosphere. The heat is actually distorting the image. So if you're bringing this camera like to a safari or to a warm environment, you may very well get that, ruining the advantage of 3,000 millimeter zoom.
The second most popular category for these cameras is the wildlife community other than birds, like on safaris with bigger animals at the zoo or wherever you may go to encounter larger scale game.
On a recent birding excursion in Central Park, came across this cute little raccoon climbing up a tree to get some shut-eye. And this is an easier subject to focus on. The animals are bigger, there's less rapid movement, so the P950 or P1100 are very well suited for this type of photography or videography. And you can see it kept the focus much better and a little easier than it is on a bird. Got a great shot there. And again, this is all taken with the P950, which is really a tremendous range. And if you think you need a P1100, well, I never was on a safari, but these are some shots here I'm sharing from other people's adventures on safaris with the P950. You absolutely can get some great shots with either camera, of course. The P1100 is perfect for it as well, especially if your wildlife is going to be much further in the distance.
Number 3, shooting planes and aviation. I never realized how popular this was until I started reading about it, and I took a crack at it myself, even though I'm not a plane spotter or an aviation photographer. It's kind of fun. Now, if you're shooting closer to an airport, then I think the P950 is more than enough. But if your planes and aircraft is going to be much farther away, then yeah, the reach of the P1100 is going to get you a lot closer to your objects.
Sorry for the shaky video. I definitely was a newbie doing aviation photography here. So I can see having it on a tripod is probably a lot better, of course, of action. But I can see the advantage of the P1100 for sure if your planes are going to be really in the distance, as you really can zero in and see a lot closer. But of course, you do have to fight through the autofocus weaknesses that these cameras have and do your best to try and combat that. You really can get some great shots of the moon with the Nikon P950 and demonstrated here. But of course, with the P1100, P1000 combination, you can get in closer to the craters. But where the P1100, P1000 shines is in the planets, deep sky objects. You have to know what you're doing. These aren't even my shots. I'm sharing with you others that have taken this. Knowing about photo stacking and all the software for astrophotography is very helpful to get much better pictures. I'm not the expert, but there's a great astrophotography comparison video between these two cameras to give you an idea of which might be better. I'll leave a link in the description.
And finally, some people are looking for a camera to take on vacations or for everyday use that has a very versatile zoom range. I mean, think about it. 24 millimeters is really nice and wide. With the P950, you go out to 2,000 millimeters. It's a phenomenal zoom range, 24 to 3,000 on the P1100. So for vacations and traveling, that is incredible. The P950, if you're going to be using it for traveling or even street photography, if you want to be discreet and you're kind of shy and you don't want to get right up on your subject and you want to shoot from a distance, the P950 can be used for that as well. And I think that would be the clear choice in this case. So what's the overall winner in my opinion? Again, this is my opinion only. The P950 is the one I would have to pick if I had to choose between the two, mainly because of the smaller size and weight for sure. And the 2,000 millimeters, 98 to 99% of the time is going to be more than enough, but yet it's much less burdensome to carry around. And if you really need 3000 millimeters, well, you can always crop in a little bit to get to the 3000 millimeter equivalent. You can't do that in video, but in photos you can. By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the near future, we're not going to see an announcement from Nikon, a successor to the P950, but I wouldn't expect a major upgrade. It would probably just be a refresh, just like they did with the P1100. Regardless of which camera you decide, these cameras are in a class by themselves. There's really no other competition. No other camera comes close in terms of what it can do with a zoom. I'd like to hear your comments. Which one are you going to get? Which one are you more favorable towards? Thanks so much for watching. Please, if you got something out of this video, do give it a thumbs up and do subscribe. We have a lot more content on the way regarding bridge cameras as well. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next video.
We had some time to spend together.